Major breaking news. Donald Trump and Pam Bondi's efforts to shut down gun control in America has taken a major step forward with a decision by the United States District Court for the District of Columbia, D.C. A Barack Obama judge has just shut down an attempt to require the Pam Bondi Department of Justice to continue to fund various quote-unquote gun prevention, gun safety programs. Over $150 million of which arose from that John Cornyn written bipartisan gun control bill enacted and signed by Joe Biden in 2022. The good news is the trend is our friend, and this is in the process of getting shut down bit by bit. Let's break it down when we come back. Hey folks, I'm Mark Smith, host of the 4 Box of Done, a proud American gun owner, constitutional attorney, member of the United States Supreme Court Bar, and I'm proud to say the top voice of the Second Amendment in America. Thank you, 2025 Gundies Awards. All right, this is huge, great news. A big day for the deep state to be crying tears. And the anti-gun movement to be crying tears as I see it. Today, it turns out that Judge Amit Mehta, a Barack Obama appointee, who sits as a district court judge in D.C., deep state D.C., Judge Mehta has issued historically many rulings against Donald Trump and Donald Trump officials. And he used to sit on the FISA court. You know, that secret court that issues secret things that allows like the deep state to spy on Americans. Well, Judge Mehta sat on the FISA court. Interesting, huh? Okay, with that said, the breaking news is this. There was a major lawsuit filed in front of Judge Mehta by a series of organizations that were arguing that it was illegal for the Trump administration's Department of Justice, run by Pam Bondi, to cancel around $800 million in grants for so-called violence prevention and safer communities, of which approximately $150 million, sound like Austin Powers there, didn't I, right? At least $150 million of these grants arose from the bipartisan gun control bill written in part by John Cornyn, the senator from Texas, signed into law in 2022 by Joe Biden. As you may recall, one of the big parts of that bill was to generate a bunch of grants that the federal government could hand out to local and other nonprofit groups, NGOs and the like. Well, needless to say, Joe Biden gave out a bunch of money, presumably to organizations to do things that were anti-gun. And the best evidence that this is true is because this is a newspaper article that was just published by The Trace that has this as a title, describing a letter that was just written and submitted to Donald Trump by Democrats in Congress. Here's the caption or the title of this article from the newspaper, The Trace. It specifically says, Democrats to Trump, restore gun violence prevention funding. The subtitle of the article goes on to say, in a letter, congressional lawmakers pressed the administration to reverse its sudden cancellation of more than $150 million for community violence prevention programs and the like. Okay? Obviously, they don't like it. And the start of that article reaffirms the title by pointing out that over 36 congressional Democrats called on Donald Trump to walk back his administration's decision to slash funding for gun violence prevention programs. Now, that letter that was written gave rise, I suspect, or at least bolstered this lawsuit brought in a case called Vera Institute versus the United States Department of Justice. In this lawsuit specifically, it argues that in April of 2025, the Department of Justice's Office of Justice Programs, without warning, supposedly, terminated more than 370 multi-year cooperative agreements and grants totaling more than $820 million. It's a lot of money. In identical notices to the affected organizations, according to the opinion by Judge Mehta describing this case, the Office of Justice Programs vaguely explained that the reasons for the terminations was that the awards no longer, listen carefully folks, that the awards no longer effectuated the program's goals or agency priorities. The notices instructed the grantees of this money to stop work immediately and informed them that they would be reimbursed only up to the date of termination. Now, this is a huge deal, folks. Huge deal. Let me tell you why. If you take the budgets of all the Second Amendment organizations in America, Second Amendment Foundation, Gun Owners of America, Firearms Policy Coalition, National Rifle Association, California Rifle and Pistol Association, and so on and so on and so on, you add it all up, you're not getting to $800 million. I don't believe you are. I don't think you're getting anywhere close to that. And yet here we have a situation where $800 million in grants from the Department of Justice going out the door to advance various causes that I'm sure are inconsistent with the Second Amendment, okay? I haven't studied every grant, but that's, I'm sure, the overall gist of the Biden's goal. That's why else would Biden send money out the door, right? To expand the size of government, size of bureaucracy, size of people that want freebies from the federal government, right? I mean, that's the whole point of the Democratic Party, to get people sucking at the teat of big government so they become dependent on big government and cheer for big government and vote for Democrats. That's the whole point of the Democratic Party, as I see it. But anyway, you have $150 million of which arose specifically from the 2022 gun control bill called the Bipartisan Gun Control Act, or whatever it is, right? For safer communities. Remember that one? Crazy, crazy. Anyway, $150 million arose from that gun control bill in 2022. More than that, in fact. But it turns out that Pam Bondi is pulling back right now as we speak $150 million of these grants. Now, one, just as a thought experiment, by the way, because in this decision by Judge Mehta, who rejected the arguments by the plaintiffs, who had tried to say, we still want our money, we want the money, pay us the money. And Judge Mehta says, no, sorry. I disagree with what Trump's doing here as a matter of policy, but legally I don't have a foot to stand on, a leg to stand on. There's nothing I can do. Specifically, here's what Judge Mehta had to say. The Trump administration defendants' rescinding of these awards is shameful. That's nothing like giving an opinion from a federal judge, right? That's pathetic. I think a judge giving his opinion is shameful, but set that issue aside. So again, Judge Mehta writes, quote, the Trump defendants' rescinding of these awards is shameful. It is likely to harm communities and individuals vulnerable to crime and violence. No federal agency, especially the Department of Justice, should conduct itself in this manner. But displeasure and sympathy are not enough in a court of law. The court's powers are limited. It cannot act without jurisdiction or in the absence of a valid cause of action. That is the rub here, or the nub here. The court cannot grant plaintiffs relief because it lacks the power to hear their claims under the Administrative Procedure Act, and because plaintiffs have failed to demonstrate a violation of any constitutional right or protection. And in light of that, that's why Judge Mehta, no friend of the Second Amendment or Donald Trump, I'm guessing, based on all the evidence, that's why he threw this case out and said, hey, you know, this I'm not going to continue the grants. I don't have the authority to keep these grants going. Sorry. Here's what he had to say in concluding his opinion. There is no doubt in the court's mind that the Office of Justice Programs award terminations were unfair and indiscriminate. When a government agency, especially the Department of Justice, agrees to fund private organizations to carry out a public purpose, such organizations expect regularity and respectful treatment. That is not what occurred here. The court laments that the limits of their own power prevent it from helping plaintiffs and similarly situated grantees. But the court cannot cure an injustice by exceeding its own authority. Accordingly, plaintiff's motion for a preliminary injunction is denied, and the defendant's motion to dismiss is granted. Plaintiff's motion for class certification is denied as moot. A final appealable order accompanies this opinion. Judge Amit Mehta. This, of course, is great news because, again, if there's $150 million going out the door as part of that gun control bill to Biden-selected grantees, I have very little doubt, might be a little bit of speculation on my part, but I have very little doubt at the end of the day that a lot of this money was being used to fund big government, anti-Second Amendment, anti-right to bear arms stuff. Now, I just want to make one final point in discussing this big win, because this is a win for the Second Amendment. Because remember how I mentioned the size of the budgets of the Second Amendment community is much smaller, as I see it, than the billionaires on the other side and the money on the other side. And then you take all this federal money from the Biden administration that was doled out to these NGOs, these nonprofits, and who knows where else it went to, none of which I'm sure is consistent with the right to keep and bear arms, and all of which is working against the right to keep and bear arms is my guess. So the fact is that you have Pam Bondi as the head of the Attorney General of the United States basically shutting down this pipeline of funds to organizations that I suspect are not doing things consistent with the right to keep and bear arms, is my guess, that makes me happy. Because there's nothing good, as far as I'm concerned, that comes out of that 2022 bipartisan gun control bill, written in part by John Cornyn, right, with the support of Joe Biden. So again, this is fantastic news, another battle won, and a big one, because not giving the foes, arguably, of the Second Amendment hundreds of millions of dollars, to me, is a good thing. And again, we want to make the private sector robust and not the public sector. The fewer people that are sucking at the teat of big government, the better it is for all of us, including the Second Amendment as I see it. And this is a huge win for Donald Trump and Pam Bondi, that their decision to cut these grants totaling up to over $800 million is a fantastic, fantastic start. There's a lot more work that needs to be done, of course, but again, we need to win every single battle that we can win, and this is the most recent battle, and the fact that you had a Barack Obama Judge Mehta there ruling in favor of Donald Trump against the lawsuit challenging the decision to terminate these grants is a great sign that maybe, just maybe, we're starting to see some, not all, but some lower district court judges hewing to the rule of law and behaving. More work to be done in that area as well. But again, the trend is our friend overall, and I'm happy to report the good news today in terms of yet another win for the Second Amendment, although it might not be so obvious, but it is a big win indeed. And we have to thank Donald Trump and Pam Bondi and the Department of Justice over there for stepping up and doing the right thing. And frankly, we got to thank Judge Mehta for affirming what should have been done and affirming this decision by Donald Trump, even though I thought it was shameful, in my opinion, that he offered his personal views on this decision. He should not have done that. But again, that's a discussion for another day. So there you have it, folks. Hope you enjoyed today's episode. Make sure you follow me on X at 4Boxes Diner. Don't forget to subscribe both to YouTube and to Rumble, and I look forward to talking to you again real soon here at the 4Boxes Diner.
Orders up. Table 2A.